Hello and welcome to another science topic together. This is the first day of our Unit 4 as we continue to explore our universe. We're going to explore our Earth, which obviously is part of the universe. The focus notes, if you want to start setting up your page, the focus notes are on Earth structure, and the EQ is what is the structure of our Earth? Fill in whatever date it is you're taking these notes. I assign them on 11/19. And then just a quick reminder about our notes. When you're taking notes from these slides, you don't have to write down the stuff that's in white. Those are things I just want to talk about. Write down the other things so that you've got enough notes, but you're not writing everything down. All right, let's talk about the Earth structure. So the birth of our Earth happened 4.4 billion years ago, right? We learned that at the end of our previous unit. So let's summarize the formation of the Earth. So what happened 4.4 billion years ago? Based on the radioactive decay of zircon, we came up with that number. So what happened? Okay, well, let's summarize this. So the Earth formation, there was space dust that collected, and at some point the Earth was hot, melted, rock, ball. So just this like ball of fire, basically. So hot, melted rocks were all kind of smashed together in a ball. That was at some point. And over the years, the Earth cooled into different layers. Elements of the Earth separated by mass, meaning that things that were heavier went one place and things that were lighter went other places. And it turns out that all of the elements and minerals that were present when the planet formed 4.4 billion years ago, that is all that we have. And they are distributed unevenly around the Earth. So think of that. So, however much iron we have on the Earth right now, that was how much iron was present 4.4 billion years ago. Over the years, it has been used for different things, and that's all there is. So that's kind of one of those, in my mind, those huge, like, thinking things to think about. And then we're going to talk about that a little bit more in this unit, this distributed unevenly, and the fact that we only have so much of certain things is one of the things that scientists are kind of trying to figure out. What do we do with that information? Okay, so that's the birth of our Earth. Now, let's talk about the layers inside the Earth. So the different Earth layers, go ahead and label this section. And would you draw this diagram? I tried to find one really simple. So basically draw a big circle, and then you can kind of cut it in half and make this kind of look like continents, and then have 1, 2, 3 lines, right? So it's divided into 1, 2, 3, 4 parts, and then there's lines that go to them. So that very middle part, maybe you know that that's referred to as the inner core. Think like core of an apple, it's like on the inside. So inner core. Then there's an outer core, as it sounds, it's on the outside of the inner core, the mantle, and then the crust. So go ahead and label that. So you've got your diagram. So a big circle to represent our Earth. And then this is just to kind of show you like it's a cross section. So this is what the outside looks like with the continents on it. And then you've got the inner core. This is the mantle. And then, inner core, outer core, mantle. And then this very outside part is known as the crust. All right, so those are the layers of the Earth. So as the Earth was forming, so that was what we mean by like different layers formed as the Earth cooled. This is why we have our different layers. Now let me give you a little bit more detail about these parts. So let's break this down into a little bit more detail. The core is 1,860 miles below the Earth's surface. It's mostly iron and zinc because those things are really heavy. So they sink to the center. The inner core is solid and the outer core is liquid. So the stuff that was really heavy, it's just super dense, smashed to the middle, that is still solid. But on the outside, right around the inner core, that part is liquid. The lithosphere is what we call the solid upper mantle and the crust. So those two parts together, so if you think of that picture you just drew, so the core is both the inner core and the outer core. The lithosphere is the upper mantle and the crust, so it's collectively those two parts. The mantle is made of slow moving magma. And just remember that magma is like melted rock. So there's this slow moving melted layer that is the mantle. And then the asthenosphere is the outer mantle, which is semi-melted. It's more kind of flexible. Think more like putty than like liquid. So like Play-Doh putty kind of thing. It's flexible, but it's not liquidy necessarily. And then you have the crust. So the lithosphere is made of the mantle, the asthenosphere, and the crust. And the crust is the outermost layer of the earth. Think of it like that's what we stand on. So if you're outside standing on ground, that is the crust of our earth. The asthenosphere is just underneath it, and then just underneath that, is the mantle. Those three things make up the lithosphere. And then underneath underneath the lithosphere is the core, and then the inner core is solid and the outer core is liquid. So those are some more of the details of the structure and the layers of our earth based on the things that we have observed. Okay, so then the other part of our earth, though, is the atmosphere. So if you think of this picture here, so here's our earth, and we just learned about the layers of the earth, but there's also different layers of the atmosphere before we get to what we consider space. And that's one of the things that kind of makes Earth special compared to some of the other planets, is that we have this atmosphere, these gases that stayed trapped by our planet's gravity instead of just floating out into space. These gases are what makes our planet unique and why the human life like we know it can live here. So the other part of our notes today is I want you to do an activity where you learn about the layers of the atmosphere. The atmosphere is divided into 4 layers, and you're going to learn more about those 4 layers by doing a reading assignment and a graphing activity. So that's what's going to happen next. So I know we've done a few graphs, but I just want to do a graphing review one more time. So I don't know if you need to write these down. It was sometime in October, maybe October 12th was the last time we took notes on graphs. So if you didn't do it then, or you forgot, or you just want to write it again, here's the review of what makes it a scientific graph. And again, the kind of memory device is called TAIL-P. So you need a title. And that title should include the variables that are on the graph, like this title, the effect of UV exposure on the appearance of mutant cells in 3 different bacterial populations. Oh my gosh, there's so much detail in there, but that detail makes it super clear what this graph is going to show me. I know why there's 3 lines, because there's 3 different bacterial populations. I know that I'm comparing the effect of the how many there are, right? So how does that UV exposure, so the amount of time that it's been exposed, how does that affect the appearance? Like how many times they appear? That tells me all that I need to know. You also need to have your axes, right? So the x-axis is telling me what I have, the y-axis is telling me what I'm having. And then when you set up your graph, notice that it doesn't go based on the things that you're plotting. It spreads out from the smallest to the biggest. So this is spread out evenly. This is spread out evenly, and it kind of matches where the data is. So this doesn't go from 0 to 1,000. That doesn't make any sense because the highest number here is 500. This doesn't go from 0 to 40 because the highest one is around 10. So notice that the intervals are evenly spaced and they match your data. Don't be bigger or smaller your range than is needed. Labels, that's this part in parentheses. So the axes is where you identify what you're graphing, amount of time. But then you need to say what units. How did you measure that time? Minutes. And then this one is just number of cells. So there's no label that needs to go with that. But like if we were if it was speed on this y-axis, you would put however speed was measured, those kinds of things. So you put the units with your axes. Don't forget that. And then the last one is you plot it. Now, usually in science, we do lines of best fit. So you look at the pattern and you say, oh, generally the pattern is linear, or generally the pattern is decreased shrinking, like something like that. So generally we do lines of best fit in science, but sometimes connect the dots is useful too. It depends on what you are doing. All right, so that's a quick review of graphing reminders. You've got this here on the video if you need to look at it again later, but you will be making a graph from the atmosphere reading, so I wanted to make sure that you had this as a review. Okay, so the graph activity that you're going to do is going to help you understand more about the Earth atmosphere, and the EQ for that activity is how does temperature change based on altitude, which is like how far in the sky you are, altitude in the Earth's atmosphere. So what you're going to do is read the introduction, graph the given information. You have to do the reading because otherwise the graphing part will not make sense. And then there's a few conclusion questions. This is due tomorrow. I'm assigning it today. So due tomorrow. So if you have questions, come to my office hours. But this will help you understand not only we already talked about the layers of the Earth, but I also want you to think about the layers of the atmosphere as part of our Earth. So that's why that's also part of our notes for today. That brings us to the end of our first day of Unit 4. So here's what I want you to do. We didn't write any CASTA questions together during the notes, so you should go back and do that. You should also do a summary for today, and then you should go work on that atmosphere graph assignment. And again, there's two parts of it. There's an introduction to read, don't skip that. Then you make the graph, and then there's those few conclusion questions. Due tomorrow, don't forget about it. All right, and we'll see you at our next Zoom. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.